Welcome to another edition of the 10-Minute POV. I think we have a wonderful discussion brewing for this episode. Today we got a wonderful partner, TEKsystems, and a recent acquisition that's part of the whole TEKsystems global services family now, 1Strategy. So we're going to have Mike Driscoll join us and Rich Olm. They'll represent a good discussion around TEKsystems and the whole life cycle of 1Strategy, and finally the bringing the two together. To lead the discussion, we're going to have Mike Dowling, who's the U.S. Central Region Partner Leader, drive the discussion. So from this point, Mike, it's yours.
You bet, Chip. Thank you very much. I really appreciate both you, Rich, and Mike joining us in this point of view platform that we're driving. We find this is a great way to help put a face behind the logo, and it gives us a little bit of insight into who the partners are that we're working with and things that are just not all that easy to convey on a battle card or an advertising slick. It really is a little bit more about who the people are and the way that you're thinking about your business. And these don't take a lot of time. They're designed for a quick hit and really open the door for another discussion that we can have to build upon our relationship as we learn about our partners and the things that they're doing to help advance the business of cloud. So let's not delay. Rich, Mike, let's get this thing started. I'm going to ask Rich a question. I love a good origin story, and I feel like 1Strategy has a particularly good one. Tell us a little bit about your journey to start first 1Strategy, and really what made you set out on your own to do this?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so some background about me, which I think, when you start a business, you are the business when it's essentially you, right, as a single person. My background has been in consulting services, right? So I've worked for many of the large consulting firms, worked for Microsoft Consulting, Accenture, Avanade, et cetera, all just doing hands-on keyboard work, helping, customers, get solutions. I started into my AWS journey in 2009, had an Accenture executive ask me if this public cloud thing was a threat to the data center business, which is kind of an interesting question to ask at that time. And I fell in love with AWS as I went on that journey to discover, and absolutely, yes, the answer was back. So I started deploying production workloads in AWS in 2010 while working at Avanade. And then went to AWS myself to work as an enterprise solutions architect in the Pacific Northwest. And loved it, loved my time with AWS. And if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I'd still be there doing that kind of work. But what I saw was customers came to me and were asking me for consulting help, right? They wanted some hands-on keyboard help. And as an SA, there's this line I couldn't cross of, getting in and helping them, solve those problems. So I said, I don't know, let me go do some investigation, find out. I went and asked the partner team, which was much smaller then, who the partners were that I should consider, referring to my customer. And as a technologist and a techie, I did not just take their word and be like, here's the list of, that I was given. I sat down and interviewed each and every one of them and started asking questions like, tell me about your cloud practice. Let me talk to your principal architects, and so I started that process. And what I found was not awesome. I found a lot of companies that were just trying to figure out the cloud, let alone be able to, consult and help customers with that. And so I finished that research. I went back to my customer and said, hey, I don't really have a good answer for you. And that was the end of 2014, right? So my first year at AWS, that was kind of one of the questions that sat on my mind. In early 2015, I went to, the global AWS sales meeting, and there was the guy from the Lean Startup book, and he's up on stage, right? And he starts talking about starting a business and seeing a need in the industry and seizing the opportunity. I'm sitting there like, he should have just said, Rich, you will stand up. I just described what happened to you over this last year. And I couldn't deny that. And so I couldn't get it off of my mind, and started, the process. And I wrote a 6-pager, right? I wrote an Amazon 6-pager because that's what you do when you're at Amazon. And I put together the business plan. I actually took a week of vacation, flew to Utah, where I knew a bunch of executives, started interviewing people. Would you use our services? What are the challenges? I did my homework. And then I scheduled a meeting with the AWS executive leadership, including some of the sellers, and said, here's my idea. What do you guys think? And I was honestly terrified, to be honest. Like, I thought they were going to be like, this is a horrible idea. And fortunately and unfortunately, they said, hey, this is awesome. What do you need from us? What help and support do you need? And I just continued to get that over and over again. And so over the next, 4 or 5 months, I had made the decision, communicated with all my leadership, hired, trained my replacement, transitioned my accounts. And July 10th, July 10th, I walked out the doors of Amazon Kumo.
Wow.
And I walked back in those doors, turned in my badge, right, on Friday. And I walked back in those doors on Tuesday with a customer in an EBC for an Azure Compete opportunity, who now spends, millions of dollars on AWS and services. And that was the beginning, right? Like, that was the beginning of my 1Strategy journey. So see if you have any clarifying questions.
What's amazing to me is, what you've done is first identified a need. You had this compelling desire to do something. Something was driving you, scared the hell out of you, and you still did it. And you basically created an organization, a company that from the get-go was cloud native. And how long did you drive that business in that capacity?
Yeah. So still to this day, I drive our business in a cloud native fashion. It's been 5 years now. It's been over 5 years. Honestly, the time has gone by so slow and so fast all at the same time. I don't know how else to describe it. And starting a business, for anyone that has done that and anyone who hasn't, your weaknesses are amplified and your strengths are amplified, right? So if you, all of the stressors that you could possibly imagine just get piled on top of you. And so I leveraged my strengths. I hired people to mitigate my weaknesses and just, dove into the whole process of that starting a business. And my background is not that, right? I told you, technology consultant, right? Business is not that side. But I took what I knew from my consulting experience and I tried to implement that in my business. And not just the technology side of being cloud native is what's impressive, but the way that I did that, right? I worked for Accenture and these big companies, and I flew all over the world. I was rarely home, right? And so I wanted our consultants to be at home at night with their families. And so I structured our company to be able to do that, and found that as such an important piece, right? Because not only do I want to do great work, I want our people to love the work they do. I want them to have, enriching lives and not make the same, I don't know if mistakes is the right word, but not have to learn the same lessons I did the same way, but to have somebody help them. I wish somebody had done that for me.
Well, it's incredible insight into how you built your business. And you've touched on a couple of things that are really important. First and foremost are people. And so you've got a spotlight on your people. And then the other thing is the actual business itself. And you've been doing this now for 5 years. You take a cloud native approach, and then next thing you know, you're looking at TEKsystems to become part of that process. That's an evolution of what you've created. How did you decide to join forces with TEKsystems, and what does that mean for the evolution of both 1Strategy's strategy and TEKsystems? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So I never wanted to settle or stop myself from progression, right? And so there came this point where I had experience with previous partners. I knew that culture was the biggest and most important thing. And so I started interviewing, and people had been pursuing me from the very beginning of like, hey, we want you to come be a part of what we're doing, right? And I really kind of made that decision to start doing that. And in 2019 and 2018, I started looking for partners. And this was more than a year, actually. So it took me a year to go from the point of where I first started talking to partners, including TEKsystems. And there was 10 of them that I went through. And I vetted their culture. I started, I don't want to say this, but I kind of was like stalking people, asking people about the company, like, tell me about what it's like to work here. And I did that whole process, and I got that list narrowed down, and TEKsystems just continued to get to the top. And what was interesting was everything I had vetted about the culture. Now having been a part of it, I actually told them, I was like, you undersold me, to be honest with you. Like, you guys have an incredible culture. But part of that process, I went and I pitched 1Strategy and our capabilities to TEKsystems. And that happened in December. I want to say it was December 10th, actually. And I sat down and I walked into this room with the leadership and executives of TEKsystems and the TEKsystems Global Services. And sitting across the table from me, kitty corner, I can remember it still vividly, is Mike Driscoll, right? And he's sitting across the corner from me. And he's one of those people that I had stalked. I was asking people, I was like, tell me about Mike Driscoll, tell me about, and so I knew a lot of the same people. And so, that's where it became, I was sharing what I had, and TEKsystems was looking for what we had. And I'll let Mike jump in and kind of share what he saw from that perspective and how we came together.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about how we work together and why we're better together, right? I think it's clear that Rich has passion, right? And I think his leadership team and the overall talent and culture of 1Strategy is critical to our strategy and our growth model going forward. And of course, there was, the due diligence perspective, proving fundamental health from a business perspective. We were immediately impressed with 1Strategy's clear strength in AWS skills and capabilities, the reputation, the relationships. Meeting Jen, Doyle, and Rich in Baltimore, December 2018, it was an immediate enlightenment of the opportunity. I think for TEKsystems, it demonstrates our all-in investment on an AWS-centric strategy for growth, really extends our ability to demonstrate mastery of the AWS platform, which is critical, and that's the 1Strategy, right?
Yeah.
Expands our ability to serve more customers, more segments, more verticals. And like Rich said, I felt like we've been aligned for a long time in our careers and our lives. And we're both so deeply focused on doing something great for the people around us. It just was quickly evident to me that it was a great combination and opportunity to grow something fantastic together.
So Mike, for the listeners that might not necessarily know the legacy of TEKsystems, how long have you guys been around, and really what is the difference between what TEKsystems has been known for and what 1Strategy now brings to the table?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think it's a wonderful synergy that we have at a foundational level and a complementary aspect as it relates to our legacy talent services organization and the cloud native approach that 1Strategy's had in place for the last 5 years. So going all the way back to the beginning, Aerotech started in 1983 with two cousins, Steve Busciotti and Jim Davis, in Baltimore, Maryland. They recognized a need in the market, much like Rich did before founding 1Strategy. And their orientation was around great service quality and relationships and differentiated sales accountability and a strong culture. And those things remain to this day. So in '94, TEKsystems was founded. Ultimately, it's part of a larger group of operating companies called the Allegis Group, which is roughly a $14 billion privately held organization. But, Tech has a full stack technology service orientation. But as you mentioned, Mike, it's not a new organization. It's been around for 30 plus years. And so, working with 1Strategy really has those fundamental alignments around our well-architected capabilities, our AWS competencies, and data and analytics and DevOps. But 1Strategy brings AI and ML as a competency and really helps our customers drive more value from their data. So that's additive, right? And TEKsystems is the first ever global consulting partner that's an APN training partner. That's huge for customer enablement and teaching our customers how to fish on their AWS journey. So you really look at the pieces that we have in common, the culture, the strong foundation of leadership, and you add on these complementary aspects. We're just better together.
That's a fantastic point, and the ability for you to be an AWS training partner is probably really helpful because of the things that companies are now struggling with, especially with the pandemic, the way that they're consuming information to make decisions about what to do with the cloud. Things have changed. And I think the way that we've done business in the past is no longer going to happen. And the way that we will do business in the future all depends on how well our partners are able to help them understand their opportunity and the challenges that they're going to have to overcome. What has your experience been, both with TEKsystems existing customers and any new customers that reach out to you? How has this pandemic impacted your ability to reach those customers, and what are those customers' biggest challenges that you've seen?
Yeah, Rich, I'll jump in here and feel free to add on. You know, we've seen customers certainly facing economic challenges, right? In certain industries, things have slowed down and come to a halt, while in other customers, they've accelerated their digital transformation. And so we've seen that come up, and really there are a lot of sort of human relative points in this pandemic, in the fact of social injustice that we all deal with, whether we're a parent or a child, you know, whether we're a husband, a wife, a domestic partner, whether we're in a big city or a small town. We really want to just focus on empathy during this time. We want to provide space for people to talk about the things that are very difficult. We know there's business impact, right? Deferred payment programs or service agreements. We've added benefits for our working parents, right? As one outreach. We've just really went from a heavy focus of in-person collaboration to this online enablement and collaboration. We've hosted, I think, 15 workshops this year so far, bringing in our customers on various topics around AWS, and we've got another half dozen planned. We tailored our well-architected offering around cost optimization so we could relieve that economic tension that we see in so many different areas, whether it's database modernization or funding options from AWS. There's just a number of things that have come into play this year that were frankly unexpected, Mike. And so the support of our communities and our people is paramount. I just want to leave with that because, you know, while we have customer opportunities that we can talk about where we started with a well-architected review and found a much larger transformational program to help them on a multi-year basis, I think it's the support for the frontline workers, bringing pizzas to the hospital workers in Chicago as an example, the small things that make a big difference for the frontline workers and the people around us. I think that's really our orientation.
You know, it's pretty amazing to hear both of you guys talk about the things that you're doing. None of it really is easy. And, you know, we've taken a sort of a saying, it's kind of a mantra, if you will, that we've got here in the Central, which is, you know, we do hard things. And the work that we do isn't easy. And really, nothing worth doing should be easy. And, you know, I bring this up because there was an article, Rich, that you wrote as I was doing a little bit of research on you that really struck me, because what you talked about was permission. And I think when people think of having permission, they always associate it with, you know, permission to succeed, permission to do something. But very often they don't look at the other side, which is permission to fail. And the article that you wrote had both of those in there. And if you've got a little bit of time, would you mind sharing with us a little bit about what you were thinking when you wrote that article?
Yeah. And thanks for asking about that. But there's so many lessons when you start a business, but the understanding permission to fail was an area where I had never previously exercised that ability like I did. The example in that article that I used was actually around the fears I had of starting a business, right? And I talk about specifically sitting down with my wife and having a conversation of like, I feel like this is what I need to do. This is really going to be hard. And her and I getting to this space where I felt like it would be okay if I did this and it failed, which honestly is one of the most freeing feelings, to know that you could start something and fail and still have it be okay, right? And my wife and I talked about specifics and logistics. It was, okay, what if we lose our house, right? I mean, we lived out of our savings for 9 months, right? Like, well, what does this look like? And if we end up having no savings and no house and all that, my wife and I talking about, but that would be okay. We've been there before. We did it once before. We can start over. That ability and support and permission was something that was needed. I needed it across my entire support system, and my wife is such an incredible part of that, and my team and all that. But my kids played a role in that. They were supportive of doing this thing, right? They're like, hey, we said we gotta, stop you guys in football, all these extracurricular activities. Like, we'll go get jobs, we'll go mow lawns, right? Like this was the response, right? They had given me permission to fail in not providing for my family, right? And so it opens up this freedom to empower you to do things that otherwise you just would not do. I mean, you look at my career history, Accenture, Avanade, Microsoft, right? Those are not small companies. I was looking for security, right? I didn't want to start a business. That was scary. That's risky. And so that permission to fail has been one of the most enabling things for me in my life, and especially in business, right? I try stuff. We do stuff all the time that I'm like, you know what, that totally didn't work. But you know what, I learned a ton from it. And so that permission to fail is a very important part of our lives. I always gave myself permission to succeed. I was very successful in my career, but I never gave myself permission to just totally have it not go the way I wanted and to fail. So
Wow. Listen, just hearing you say these things, I've got goosebumps on my arm, because it really talks about the dedication, not just the passion and the motivation, because those things go away. You're at a different level. You've got a bit of obsession going, which is going to drag you well past any finish line that you've put yourself in front of or somebody has put in front of you. And hearing that level of understanding of what you're doing, even with all of the risks, I mean, it's really motivating and inspiring. And I really appreciate you giving the opportunity for us to hear about it. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
I think with that, we should probably end here, because we've got a number of things that we're going to have to start putting together some questions for to have our next conversation about what this evolution is that you guys are building at TEKsystems and 1Strategy. I'm absolutely ecstatic about the promise of the future with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks to everyone. This was fantastic. Really appreciated the opportunity to have all three of you join us. Till our next time. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.